One of the stories we've tried to cover here with an intense focus and consistency is how the right's policies damage human beings and how the right continues to ignite culture wars that rile up their base ahead of the 2024 election in a bid to stay relevant in today's world. Again, human consequences be damned. Over the last few months, these efforts have largely been spearheaded by one man, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. His crusade against wokeness has led him to wage an all-out war with one of the world's most beloved brands. Disney just this week filed a lawsuit in federal court alleging that DeSantis and other state officials have carried out a, quote, targeted campaign of government retaliation against the company. The real story here might be how the GOP's culture wars on some of the most vulnerable people in our population are not being done in the shadows. They're now in the mainstream of Republican politics, out in the open for any and everyone to see. This was on display this week when a regular guest on our show, the president of the American Federation of Teachers, Randi Weingarten, testified in front of a House panel on schools and COVID-19 and was confronted by none other than Marjorie Taylor Greene, who questioned not only her credentials as a teacher, but shockingly, it became very personal. Take a listen.
Ms. Weingarten, are you a medical doctor?
I am not.
Are you a mother?
I am a mother by marriage.
By marriage, I see. What I'd like to talk about is your recommendations to the CDC as not a medical doctor, not a biological mother, and really not a teacher either. None of your advice had to do with to stop the spread of COVID-19. It was all about teachers staying home. And there was big results of that. Let me tell you, I am a mother, and all three of my children were directly affected by the school closures, by your recommendations, which is something that you really can't understand. The problem is people like you need to admit that you're just a political activist, not a teacher, not a mother, and not a medical doctor.
Before you throw something at your TV, that's the Republican Party. That's the person Kevin McCarthy needs in his corner. That's the person Kevin McCarthy has handed the keys to the kingdom to. Joining our conversation, Randi Weingarten, plus former RNC Chair Michael Steele, now an MSNBC contributor. Andrew's still with us. Randi, I almost couldn't process that, and I know Michael put out a tweet. I'm going to read it. I have a lot of thoughts, but how are you processing that attack?
You know, well, first, Nicole, I have been attacked by and villainized for a lot of my professional life for just trying to stand up for people. I mean, and you know, I learned as a teacher a long time ago, it's not what's said, it's what's heard. And you have to actually meet people where they are. So, you know, for most of that hearing, I tried to actually figure out how to respond to the questions and how to tell the story to the camera when they let me talk. But what she did was, it's just this dehumanization that you see autocrats do, and you see people who don't want to solve problems do. And what's unfortunate is that it's so venal and so mean that I can take it. I'm a public figure. I mean, I called Sharon's kids, or one of Sharon's kids, earlier in the day, and I expected something like this to happen, and I warned her that it might happen. She was fantastic. She said to me, you know, it's, you know, we love you and we're with you. But it's just a matter of the undermining of people, the undermining of trans kids, the undermining of the other. And so I felt like I was taking one for the team, but the vile homophobic nature of it was pathetic. And the undermining of families was pathetic.
We're going to have to deal with the dehumanization point. Let me just put a pin in that, because Michael Steele put out a tweet that I don't know if I'll read it without crying.
Oh my God, it was amazing.
Let me try. Not a biological mother, Michael Steele tweeted. Well, Marjorie Taylor Greene, the woman who adopted me, cared for me, raised me, loved me, inspired me, disciplined me, educated me, and at 95 still smiles when I walk in the room, didn't need biology to be my mother. #adoption. Michael Steele.
I watched the whole thing because a lot of the stupid now on the internet, thank you, Elon, is, people saying, well, did you see the whole thing? I said, yeah, I watched it. I watched the whole thing. I watched the dehumanization process, the degradation. But when you got to that part where she went after Randy as a mom, you questioned her motherhood, regardless of how she came into it, because women and men come into parenting in a whole lot of different ways. It just struck such a raw nerve for me as an adopted child to think that a Marjorie Taylor Greene could look at my mother and say she's not a mother. Well, you need to shut the you-know-what up and step back. Because motherhood is something that comes from the heart. It is something you do. It's an expression of love, discipline, all the things I said. And to me, for the party, my party, that sat here and railed for years about the value of the family, to watch this classless act and these classless words being thrown at someone because you disagree with them politically. I've debated, Randy. We've had our skirmishes. I've skirmished with teachers' unions here in Maryland. But I would never look at her and say, well, you're unfit to have this discussion because you don't know what it is because you're not a mother. What the hell? So this is, again, the process that we're going to have to go through as we begin to sort of reimagine this country. And we have a choice. It's either looking at someone like Randy and her story, looking at me and my story, and saying that somehow we're less qualified, less capable, less valuable because of our circumstances, Nicole. It's not just a dangerous slope, it is an un-American slope, particularly given one that, we claim that we are so much for the family and the value of individuals and how they raise their families. It just struck a raw nerve for me.
I want to do this without hyperbole, but I want to say this clearly today here with all three of you. If we don't jump on and rapidly respond to dehumanization campaigns when they happen, they're achieving what the right needs them to achieve. Alex Jones couldn't have the dead babies at Sandy Hook exist, because then we might do something different about guns. Republicans can't have the moms of trans kids and dads just trying to figure out the best way to love and support their kids. They can't exist, because if that mom is as compassionate and committed to her child or his child as they are, then they can't square their own hate-filled hearts and their intolerance. If the laws banning drag shows, why they push for permitless carry, happen at the same time, and they haven't dehumanized the part of the country that they don't agree with or approve of, then they can't push through their agendas. They rely on the dehumanization being allowed to slide. They need that. And when we let it happen, we aid them. How do we stop it in its tracks, Michael Steele?
I think you stop it in its tracks by shaking our fellow Americans and understand that they're saying this about all of us. They're saying this about your family, your mom, right? Your relatives, your circumstances. And so how much do you value that? How much do you value those things? Do you value them enough to actually say stop and to say no? Or do you devalue them like they do and think, well, that's Randy and Michael, it's not me? Because that separation is what's required here in order for what Marjorie Taylor Greene said to stick and to work. I mean, the words weren't taken down in the committee. The party hasn't responded to it. I don't see members rushing to a bank of microphones to elevate all forms of motherhood and however it comes about. It's silence. And so it's left to moments like this where you try to call the nation's attention to what happened in a hearing that could happen anywhere in this country going forward. And the next thing we know, what do we have? Everybody becomes other. And so I wanted to respond in that moment. And Randy, forgive me, I didn't want to cite you in the tweet because I knew you had enough going on in that moment.
Thank you, Michael.
But I just wanted to show that you weren't alone in your stance here and what happened to you. And this was not about a partisan this was about watching a mother sit there bravely, quietly, stoically, taking crap from this idiot who then had the nerve to say, well, I'm a mother. Well, a fine example you are. If this is what you're teaching your kids, how to look at someone that you disagree with, or how to look at someone whose lifestyle, community, experiences are different from yours. That's what we've got to push back on, because they're trying to slowly strip it away to where it has no value, except for however they define that value. And I refuse to let that happen.
Randy. So
first off, I really appreciated, Michael, I really appreciated what you did, and it made me cry. And, I don't normally tend to crying, but I want to also say something more about what Nicole and you just said. We start at different parts of the political spectrum, but we respect each other, and we talk to each other, and we talk out issues. That's what America is. And at the end of the day, the dehumanization here, you see it in so many ways. So many teachers have said to me, they don't want to say anything anymore. They don't know what to teach in a class. They don't know if a word that they say is going to get them in trouble, get them fired. The attempt to divide parents from teachers, when most teachers are parents, the attempt not to bring family together in all sorts of different families. And maybe it's because I'm gay and I've been gay for a very long time. There's a different view of family. And we need to bring families and connections together, and we need to be Americans. We're better than this. But the divisiveness and the cruelty stops people from talking because they want just to hide. And we need people to have these conversations and to call out the dehumanization, because dehumanization leads to incitement, and incitement leads to violence. And we need to find a way to talk about our differences, to be solution-driven, but to call out this level of cruelty and dehumanization.
Well, and I have to sneak in a quick break, or someone's going to try to silence me, but I don't want to lose this thread, because I think this is where the political opportunity and the human opportunity actually serve one another, right? If we can all connect as human beings and say, hey, let's debate, right? As Michael said, he said debates about education policy or whatnot. That's all of us over here, right? But we treat each other with respect as humans. If we can then form the political coalition where we don't agree with each other, we're just not going to denigrate and judge and ostracize and marginalize. Sure. Then you can get something going. But they rely on all of us, women who they can force to have state-mandated pregnancies, even if they're raped. I mean, they count on all of us going to our own corners to plot our own fights in these various issues. Their greatest fear is that we all share notes and have each other's back at moments like this. So I want to do that, but I do have to sneak in a quick break. We'll all be right back.
What do you have to say to some of those state legislators who maybe have your jersey in their closets, who came and brought their kids to your game to cheer for you?
Well, I think that's another reason why I don't live in this state. A lot of people don't know that. I have to make decisions for my family. Not just personal individual decisions. I mean, obviously the taxes is great. Having Wade County is great, but my family would not be accepted or feel comfortable there. And so that's one of the reasons why I don't live there.
was an incredible moment. That was retired NBA legend Dwayne Wade sitting down with sports journalist Rachel Nichols and opening up about his family's reasoning for leaving the state of Florida, where he played for a big chunk of his Hall of Fame career for the Miami Heat. In 2020, Wade's 15-year-old daughter, Zaya, came out as trans, and the family decided to move given the growing anti-LGBTQ rhetoric around the country, but especially in their state of Florida, where Ron DeSantis' war against wokeness runs deepest. Wade's story is not unlike other LGBTQ families in Florida who are leaving the state in droves. Randy, Michael, and Andrew are back with us. Michael, not everybody, we should just say, not everybody has the means to relocate their family, but this isn't the first story we've heard on our air of a family not feeling safe living in Florida. I mean, what has happened in the laboratory of right-wing extremism that expelling Dwayne Wade's family from your state and others like him and like his daughter is viewed as good politics or good policy or good humanity?
Well, it is how our politics have undermined, corroded, and continues to erode the moral structure and the moral fiber, where, as we were discussing, we look at his family and we look at my family and your family and make judgments about it. And we allow that to continue the way it has. And so, yeah, we're going to see more of this. And it's unfortunate that we will. But again, going back to the point, we have to decide to stand up against it. And I just want to one more last point on this, just say directly to Marjorie Taylor Greene. You remember that little boy named Jesus? Well, his daddy was a stepdad.
You're so good. You're so good. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I hate to make anybody follow Michael Steele. I'll give you that turn, Andrew Weissman.
Thank you so much, Nicole. So, you know, I think on the one hand, I think that the Republicans may have gone too far. I mean, Dobbs was horrific, but politically a loser. Mm-hmm. Marjorie Taylor Greene going after all adoptive parents. I mean, Amy Coney Barrett is sitting there going, I wonder what that means. I mean, she adopted a number of children. It's just, so you have that at the one end of this extreme that really can't be resonating with the majority of the people. The problem is gerrymandering, is that Donald Trump and a certain part of the Republican Party has learned that you don't need a majority to win. Mm-hmm. That you can actually gerrymander. So one answer to your question of what can we do, people really need to be focused, like Mark Elias, on voting rights, because this strategy can work if you actually undermine the way in which we elect people.
Well, it's why the opposite is true, right? I mean, it's why Republicans are going after it.
Exactly.
I have to sneak in one more break, but on a day like today, Randy will get the last word. Don't go anywhere. We're back with Randy, Michael, and Andrew. Randy, as promised, you get the last word.
So let me just say that what Michael said before and what you said before is really important. This can't just be political. It just can't be about what we do in November. I think that when we see people being treated so cruelly, and indecently, people of different political factions have to come together, and it will have a lot of strength if we do. We can debate about issues, but that's what school teachers do every day. You don't wait to say to a kid, are you a Democrat, are you a Republican, are you an independent? Kids come into your classroom, you try to teach the whole child, you try to help them thrive. And I think that we need to, and that's why I really appreciated what Michael did and others did, we need to call out the cruelty and call out the deprivation and the dehumanization.
Well, and I think, to bring it back to kids and how we raise our kids, Randy, you and I have had a ton of conversations about our kids and our kids watching. If you are raising a child, as most of us are, to be the kid who sticks up for someone who is being bullied or attacked, we have to do it, right? That has to be what we model. It has to be what they see on social media, in the workplace, in life. Randy, we're so glad to have you here and to have this conversation. Michael Steele, thank you for the tweet. Thank you for being you. And Andrew Weissman, thank you for being at the table with us for the hour.